Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling, well, maybe the single most stubborn idea in human existence.
The I.
Exactly, the I, that inner narrator, this supposed permanent self, the central operator we call the thinker, who we think runs the whole show.
It's the ultimate default setting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And our source material today gives this really radical instruction, the necessity of cutting off the idea, I am the thinker. We're diving into teachings that say this self-identification isn't just a mistake, it's the actual root of all mental proliferation, all the complication, and ultimately all the suffering.
So our mission for you, the learner, isn't to find some true self hidden under all the confusion. We're not on a scavenger hunt for a soul here.
No.
Instead, our mission is to clinically dissect and dismantle the very mechanism that creates that illusion of ownership and permanence in the first place.
Exactly. We need to understand the underlying code. We're tracing the mechanisms of suffering right back to their origin point, which is that conditioned view of a self. And then we'll detail the practical training required for that sense of self to just cease.
And crucially, this cessation doesn't require a permanent I to be the one doing the work.
That's the key. The practice itself is a kind of non-self mechanism for liberation.
Okay, let's unpack this. If the self is an illusion, it must be built out of real components. What are the building blocks we're constantly mistaking for me?
The foundational sources call them the 5 grasping aggregates.
Okay.
So first there's form, which is basically the body. Then feeling, the sort of emotional or hedonic tone of an experience. Then perception, which is how we recognize things.
Like, that's a tree.
Precisely. Then choices, or volition. Those are the impulses, the mental habits. And finally, consciousness, which is sensory awareness itself.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive. It covers everything from my physical body to my moment-to-moment thoughts. But if they're always changing, how does the mind get so tricked into seeing them as one stable thing?
See, the problem isn't the aggregates themselves. The problem is the grasping.
Ah.
Imagine those 5 things are just this rapidly flowing temporary stream of data. The mind takes these little snapshots of the stream, a pleasant feeling, a recognition of a sound, and says, I own that, that's continuous, that is me.
What's the technical term for that fatal mistake?
It's called the identity view. This is where an unlearned person looks at any of these transient aggregates and thinks, this is mine, I am this is myself. You can see it everywhere in the modern world. I am my success. That's grasping choices in form.
Right.
Or I am my crippling anxiety.
Right, that's grasping feeling in consciousness. So when you identify with something, whether it's a belief or how you look, you're tying your sense of stability to something that's inherently unstable.
Precisely. And because these aggregates are inherently impermanent, perishable, and ultimately a form of suffering, tying your identity to them, well, it guarantees sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress when they inevitably change or vanish.
Grasping the perishable is a guaranteed path to pain.
It is.
This is where that specific insight from the sources becomes so vital, right? The distinction between perception and the self.
Yes, that's a key distinction. The sources are incredibly precise here, they say. Perception is one thing, and the self is another. You can watch a person experiencing perceptions arising and ceasing. One thought flashes, another takes its place, like frames in a movie.
Okay.
The simple fact that you can observe perceptions changing and perishing confirms that the supposed permanent self cannot be the perception.
Wait, okay, but if the ultimate insight is that all of it, form, feeling, perception, all of it, past, present, future, is impermanent and suffering, doesn't that require some kind of stable observer, a seer, to recognize that impermanence? Isn't that the I that remains?
That is the paradox the practice addresses, and the answer is no. The moment you define that seer as a permanent I, you've just created a 6th thing to grasp onto.
Oh, okay.
What the practice cultivates is understanding, which is just the function of clear seeing. Seeing that everything, including the moment of seeing itself, is conditioned and impermanent. The goal is just to give up desire for what is seen to be perishable.
That completely reframes it. The focus is on the mechanism, not the agent. Okay, so if the thinker is an illusion built on grasping these transient things, then what's the actual conditioned process that causes suffering to start and keep going? We need to trace that chain.
For that, we turn to the profound structure of dependent origination. Suffering isn't random. It flows like a chemical chain reaction. The whole mass of suffering begins with ignorance.
Ignorance of what, specifically?
The lack of understanding of these 4 noble truths. This ignorance is a requirement for choices or volitional activities. Those choices then condition consciousness, which leads to contact. And contact leads to feeling.
And once feeling is there, good, bad, or neutral, that conditions craving. Craving feels like the crucial pivot point. That's the moment we go from just passively experiencing something to actively generating future pain.
Absolutely. Craving is a requirement for grasping. And this grasping is the mechanism that keeps the whole cycle spinning. It's that intense desire to hold on to pleasant things or just to keep existing.
So grasping is what causes continued existence.
The sources are explicit. It requires future rebirth, old age, and death. It's the engine that just keeps generating future baggage.
What's critical here is that the self isn't the starting point in this chain. It's a downstream product.
Exactly. The self-view itself is a conditioned phenomenon. It is born from that flow of craving, feeling, contact, and ignorance. It's not some timeless entity. It's an output of the system we're trapped in.
So it's not the driver.
No. It's like a passenger who grabs the steering wheel and insists they built the car.
So if the whole system is conditioned, how does cessation work? If there's no permanent agent, who or what breaks the chain?
Cessation, or freedom, is simply the reverse of that chain. When grasping ends, the cycle stops creating new existence. The astute mind doesn't proceed to a future life because, well, the fuel is gone. The focus shifts to the utter cessation of what the sources call instigating activity. Because, as it's stated, all the suffering that originates is caused by instigating activity.
We have to literally pull the plug on the generating mechanism, stop investing in the illusion.
And that stopping is achieved through deep experiential understanding. You have to understand three things about the five aggregates: the temporary pleasure or gratification they offer, their inevitable drawback,
Their impermanence and pain.
right, and the ultimate escape from them. When that wisdom is fully realized, one becomes detached and liberated. The moment that relishing, that mental yes to the craving ceases, the cycle ends. The mind is freed.
This all sounds intellectually rigorous, but we have to talk practice. If the whole process is conditioned, then the practice must also be a conditioned process, a system hacking another system. How do we translate this massive non-self-understanding into, a physical moment-to-moment training? Where do we begin to unhook that thinker?
The training is very systematic and intentional. It's detailed in the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is developed precisely to incline towards extinguishment. It relies on developing seclusion, fading away, and cessation.
Okay, so let's start with the most immediate, the frontline defense. What stops the proliferation from even starting?
That would be sense restraint. This is the practical application of cutting off the idea, I am the thinker, before it can even proliferate. When you, as the observer, know sights, sounds, smells, taste, anything, the core instruction is simple. Do not get caught up in the features and details.
Can you help me understand the difference there between just neutral contact and getting caught up?
Sure. Neutral contact is just the sense organ hitting the object. The eye sees a cookie. Getting caught up in the details is where the thinker jumps in. That cookie looks so sweet. I remember how good that was. I deserve that. If I don't get it, I'll be annoyed.
All that commentary.
That commentary, the labeling, judging, desiring, that is the fuel for grasping.
So if a person approves and welcomes and clings to those experiences, that's the fuel that sustains the identity view.
Exactly. Consciousness gets support and proliferation begins. But if they do not approve or cling to those details, relishing ceases right there at the point of contact.
And the suffering that would have followed just doesn't happen.
It's cessation at the source. It prevents the conditioning chain from ever starting.
Which brings us to the deeper mental training, the famous mindfulness meditation or satipana. How does this kind of observation help dismantle the thinker if we're not allowed to be a permanent seer?
Well, mindfulness isn't passive observation. It's the active cultivation of clarity. It involves observing four kinds of phenomena: the body, feelings, the mind, and principles. But the crucial element here is the mental quality required. This observation must be done, this is a direct quote, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world.
That rid of covetousness and displeasure part is key. It means observing without judgment or desire. You're just tracking the phenomenon, not deciding if you like it or hate it.
Precisely. For example, observing the breath is observing an aspect of the body. You are not trying to make the breath deeper or shallower. You're simply practicing stilling physical processes, just observing the impermanence of the inflow and outflow, keen, aware, and mindful.
I see. That rigorous practice breaks the assumption of permanence because you see everything as just momentary input.
Hmm.
So once that foundation of restraint and keen, non-judgmental awareness is set, the training progresses into profound mental stability, the state of immersion, or jhana.
Hmm.
Why is that deep stability so necessary?
The stability of jhana allows the mind to truly look at the most subtle components of experience without any reactivity, without the self-view instantly jumping in. By being secluded from sensual pleasures and unskillful qualities, the meditator moves through the absorptions, which are these increasingly refined states of concentration.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about clarifying the lens.
It is the stabilization required to perceive the deep truths of impermanence. The progression involves giving up the coarser forms of rapture and pleasure. The ultimate goal here is to give up both pleasure and pain, and to end former happiness and sadness.
That sounds like a radical state of non-reaction.
It is. The mind eventually enters and remains in the fourth absorption, a state without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This is the peak of mental stability. It stills the remaining physical process, and it creates the perfect environment for the mind to truly examine the aggregates and see their impermanence, their suffering, and their non-self nature with unshakable clarity.
Okay, let's tie this all together. What does the final product look like? When the entire conditioned system succeeds, and that identification with a permanent thinker is utterly and permanently uprooted.
The accomplished being, the one who has fully ended the defilements, has reached a state of profound, irreversible freedom. The sources describe this transformation vividly. They have shed the near shore and the far shore. They've rid themselves of attachments to this world, and the next, as a serpent, sheds its old, worn-out skin.
That image of radical renewal, it really speaks volumes about severing ties with that old identity.
They are rid of the unskillful roots, greed, hate, and delusion, and they have no underlying tendencies that would prompt any future conditioning. They are unyoked from all yokes, human and heavenly.
They're described as being cooled.
Yes, cooled and entirely free of attachment. And crucially, they know with unshakable certainty that their spiritual journey is complete, that there will be no more future lives.
The ultimate cessation of continued existence. And this freedom is achieved entirely through structured practice, through observing, restraining, stabilizing, and letting go. It's achieved not by finding a true hidden I, but by understanding that the entire mechanism of the thinker is based on grasping the temporary.
Yes, the mind is freed from defilements by not grasping. When desire for what is seen, heard, and thought of is eliminated, the mind is said to be truly and permanently free.
This deep dive has really shown that the shortcut to freedom isn't finding a true self, but realizing that the thinker is just a complex, conditioned phenomenon built on clinging to temporary mental and physical stuff.
And the solution is the rational, systematic practice designed to systematically dissolve that clinging.
And that system relies entirely on intentional inquiry, which the texts call rational application of mind.
Yes, the cultivation of every single factor of awakening. Mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, calm, concentration, equanimity. It is all directly fueled by this rational application. It's about applying the mind intentionally, rather than just letting it default to its old, irrational, conditioned views.
So the learner, as you reflect on this rigorous process of unhooking the thinker, we leave you with this final challenging thought. Think about the next time you feel that urge to grasp or react today.
Yeah.
What immediate steps can you take to apply a rational application of mind, a disciplined, non-judgmental awareness, to just dismantle that particular conditioned view of permanence that just arose?
Because that is where the practical work of freedom really begins.